Thank you. Good afternoon, City Councilor, staff, and Madam Clerk. My name is Veronica Gonzalez, and I'm a chair of ACORN's Mountain Chapter. I'm delegating today in support of the city taking action on renoviction. ACORN is a multi-issue mass-based union of low to moderate income people. The purpose of this union is to give people power so that they can have their voices heard at the highest levels of the country. With chapters across the region, province, and Canada, ACORN is able to both be a local-based union winning local campaigns, as well as a large organization combining forces to fight national corporations and governments that are at the root of most of our problems. ACORN Hamilton started in 2017 and has grown to have 3 chapters across the city, downtown, Mountain, and East End. Our local campaigns have been focused on affordable, livable housing. Renoviction is the practice and tactics used by landlords to evict and force out tenants under the guise of major renovations. The goal is to displace low and moderate income tenants who are paying below the market rent. Renovated units get rented out at a much higher rate after the landlord applies for an AGI, which is an above guideline rent increase. Renovictions it's having serious impacts to low income and vulnerable tenants and communities. One causes displacement of low income and vulnerable residents and homeless for all those tenants that cannot afford the market rents. Destroys existing stock of market affordable housing, drives up rents in the neighborhood, causes housing instability for tenants, increases demand on social housing, incentivizes landlords to deliberate let their buildings fall into despair, increasing pressure of social and mental health and health services, also increases homelessness. While the city does not currently measure the scale of the problem, we know that this practice and tactics are increasing across Hamilton and in cities around here. In 2012, there were 413 applications filed at the Landlord Tenant Board. There have been more than 80 applications between 2012 and 2019. And the 2020, when we are at the global pandemic, 33 applications were filed at the board. The applications were scattered across the city, but majority in wards 1, 3, 4, and 7. Ward 3 topped the list with 11 applications. But these numbers only capture situations when landlords file at the board as the last resort. It means tenants didn't accept their landlord offers of compensation and move out by the date of the renoviction notice. It means tenants stood their ground and resisted lowball buyouts or didn't get fed up and with the lack of repairs. Unfortunately, these tactics by landlords are effective. For example, at 41 Albert in Ward 3, the landlord only had to file 3 applications, which is 3 tenants left, because of other 9 tenants already have moved out. Hamilton is in a housing crisis and low-income residents are struggling to defend their housing. Vacancy rate of Hamilton rental units was 3.5% in 2020. Average market rent for 1 bedroom is $13.75 and above. Waiting list for social housing stands at over 5,000 households. In 2019, almost half of the city's renters, 45.4%, were unaffordable housing, more than 30% of their income. Hamilton tenants cannot afford to be renovated. ODSP individuals receive $1,169, OW $733, EI $2,000, and that can vary. minimum wage full-time before taxes, $2,100. Since the new year, ACORN has met with Hamilton Council and city staff to discuss what other jurisdictions have done on renoviction. ACORN met with the city councilor and city staff of the new Westminster, BC, to learn about bold and necessary anti-renoviction policies they passed in 2019.
Good afternoon, city councilors and city staff. My name is Darlene Wesley. I'm a member of ACORN East Hamilton chapter and a tenant in Ward 4. I have lived at 309 Strathern Avenue for 17 years. There have been 2 owners at the building since I have lived here, and we have had the current landlord for the past 8 years. My apartment is close to everything: transit, grocery stores, laundromats, gas stations, center mall. Tenants in my building also work in the neighborhood. I really enjoy this area, and if I didn't, I wouldn't have been here for this long. The current owner tried to sell the building in 2019 and 2020, but for some reason the deals fell through. There was 2 of them. The building has 5 units, all home to working class and low income tenants. One tenant has lived here even longer than myself. I think his is 23 years. While the building could be cleaned a little better once in a while, it is very livable. My daughter lives in the floor below me, and her unit was renovated before she moved in 7 years ago. Right now, I pay $667 for a 1-bedroom apartment. I also have 2 storage units, so that's a little bit more. There is a unit in the building that became vacant after my neighbor friend passed away, and the landlord made a quick renovation there. Paint, updated the bathroom, new floors and such, and he increased the rent to $1,200 a month. In October 2020, the landlord handed all 5 tenants an N13 eviction notice to vacate by March 31st, 2021. Tenants in the building know their rights, and nobody has moved yet. But I know many tenants across Hamilton would have taken the notice as an eviction and moved out because it does look threatening. Attached to the N13 notice were 2 papers describing the work that the landlord wants to do. It says that scant cosmetic renovations have been completed in the past 50 years of the building, and he wants to complete major renovations in the building to increase the value. So that tells me that it's just pure greed. Okay, the landlord estimates that the renovation will take approximately 6 months to complete. However, that's an estimate barring any unforeseen circumstances. It's not uncommon for the variable factors such as supplies of shortages to affect the time given. I will be entitled to $2,001 compensation. That will barely cover moving costs, first and last month's rent, and finding a short-term affordable lease is going to be next to impossible. If the landlord wants to do these renovations, they should find a way to do it with me in the building, and accommodate the tenants during the renovation, especially in the middle of a pandemic. If I have to move, it will be devastating to me. I have COPD and other health problems, and I won't even be able to pack my own apartment up because I get winded right fast. And I'll never be able to find this rent again. We found out that the landlord has already filed at the Landlord Tenant Board in November, but because of COVID-19, these types of no-fault evictions have not been prioritized. Excuse me. We are awaiting our hearing date. In February, the landlord dropped us all checks in our mailboxes with no note, no explanation, nothing. He hasn't even talked to any of us, actually. I check the city website weekly, and as of yet, there are still no building permits under review. Like many other tenants in Hamilton facing losing our homes, we would like to ask the city to have our backs and do everything possible to protect low-income and vulnerable residents And please adopt the new Westminster licensing program. That would really, really help us. Thank you for listening.
Hello, City Councilors, City staff, and fellow delegates. My name is Dayna Sparks, and I am Chair of ACORN's East Hamilton chapter. Today, I'm delegating in support of the city taking action on renoviction. ACORN represents low and moderate income renters who are facing the brunt of the housing crisis. Hamilton landlords are using predatory tactics to displace low-income and vulnerable tenants, buyouts, harassment and intimidation, stopping repairs and pest treatment, illegal notices to move for renovation, and N13 eviction notices. After releasing our Defend Our Homes report in August of 2020 on how the city needs to use its municipal powers and tools to restrict renoviction, our members were happy to see in December a motion passed by Councillor Clark to look into what other jurisdictions have done to protect tenants and come back with recommendations for Hamilton. Since January 2021, ACORN leaders have met councillors and city staff to discuss municipal powers and tools to restrict renoviction and the urgency for the city to act. In February, ACORN held an 80-person virtual forum with local allies and invited Councillor Jamie McAvoy from Westminster, British Columbia, to speak about the strong anti-renoviction policy his city passed in 2019. ACORN also met with city staff from New Westminster to learn about their anti-renoviction and landlord licensing program. While the Tenant Defense Fund report isn't exactly the bold action ACORN members, Hamilton tenants, and allies were counting on, we are pleased to see changes to expand the Tenant Defense Fund, and we urge the city moving forward to seriously investigate how Hamilton can restrict renoviction. ACORN has highlighted the groundbreaking anti-renoviction policy passed by New Westminster, BC, and similarities in provincial legislation. In British Columbia, municipalities also cannot withhold building permits. Through the tool of licensing, New Westminster was able to put conditions in place to restrict renoviction and ensure tenants were protected if landlords pursued vacancy for renovations. We urge the city to investigate on how Hamilton can put similar tenant protections in place. Councillor McAvoy shared with us that New Westminster did a study on similar building permits given out for condos and residential apartments. They found that for the same work, condo owners rarely had to move out, but tenants did. Hamilton landlords are using the threat of eviction for major renovations as a way to pressure tenants out of their unit. Once a building becomes vacant, landlords will do repairs to attract higher income tenants and re-rent out the units at a much higher price. In a housing crisis, tenants cannot afford to be renovicted and lose their affordable apartment. For changes to the Tenant Defense Fund, it is great to see the fund expanded to support tenants facing renoviction. If landlords pursue eviction through the Landlord and Tenant Board with an N13 application, tenants will need support hiring legal representation and experts to dispute their landlord's claim that their suites must be vacated for X amount of months for renovations. Toronto also recently expanded their Tenant Defense Fund. We spoke to the Federation of Metro Tenants Association, and they shared Toronto's fund is maxed out every year. The fund provides eligible tenant groups with a grant to help cover the cost of legal representation and an additional grant up to $10,000 to hire an expert. For example, tenants could hire an engineer or contractor to dispute the landlord's application. There needs to be outreach and support to ensure that tenants are aware and can access the program. The report states that there is still $50,000 in the Tenant Defense Fund, which was established in 2019 as a pilot program that started out with $50,000. Make the program permanent and let the residents of Hamilton know that it's there. The success of the Toronto Tenant Defense Fund is related to their robust outreach and support staff program. A tenants' right agency, the Federation of Metro Tenants Association, works with the city to facilitate the fund. The feasibility of an equivalent program and tenant hotline for Hamilton's fund needs to be assessed. Lastly, it's imperative that city staff clearly define what a proactive tenant education would involve. ACORN is proposing that there be tenant outreach and proactive bylaw enforcement when things like a building changes ownership, a tenant reports a buyout offer or N13 notice by their landlord, and when the city receives any building permit application for a multi-residential dwelling. Tenant education should include contact and application information for the Tenant Defense Fund and should also include property standards bylaw, the ward counselor, Hamilton Community Legal Clinic, the Housing Help Center, ACORN Tenant Union, and their general rights with reference to displacement. I am a victim of having a landlord try to evict me. I have lived in my place of residence for nearly 10 years, and because I pay $989, the company that owns my complex has been trying numerous tactics, like I first mentioned when I started speaking. I have been offered a buyout, I have been lied to, and to this day, I still have difficulty getting maintenance requests attended to. I know another tenant who has been called names and who has been told because they owe the company money, the company is refusing to do maintenance and pest treatment until this person pays off their debts. What kind of world is this when we can't call a house or an apartment our home? Everybody deserves safe, healthy, and affordable housing, and ACORN knows that the city of Hamilton has the power to make that a reality. ACORN looks forward to continuing to work with council, city staff, and community partners on these important issues. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan. I'm part of ACORN from the East End. We stand against renoviction. I'd like to talk about first the Defense Fund program for tenants. This program needs to be expanded in every avenue. How much people get for legal aid, who qualifies, must be expanded broadly. The amount of money also in the funding needs to be expanded. And at the same time, it needs to be a mainstay. It has to be, we have to create multiple nets, and this is one of them that needs to be there. Another net that we need to create is the enforcement of permits. There are some things that legally can't be done in the municipal area. However, enforcing that permits are there and that they are signed and that nothing is getting pushed further ahead of schedule when nothing is prepared should be something that's done, especially to defend and protect tenants from a lot of manipulation and scare tactics that's used against them. I believe these are strong points that we need to consider, and we need to have the will to engage and move past a lot of the hiccups that might come from other parties. Thank you, and have a great day.
Good evening, City Councilors. My name is Gordon Smyth, and I am a member of Hamilton ACORN's North End chapter. I have lived at 468 James Street North in Hamilton for 6 years. This was low-income housing, which cost me $525 a month. Basic shelter from ODSP at maximum for me is $497 a month. That means my basic shelter only covers 95% of the $525 rent. 42% of my total support goes towards rent. Or did. Here's my problem. A company called Matas Group from Halton purchased our building. We were issued N13s on March the 2nd of this year. Our date to vacate the property is June the 30th of 2021. When the building was purchased back in 2017 by JVN Developments, those of us on low income were already starting to look for a new place to live that was low income and close to what we have been paying. They don't exist. Unfortunately, the prices JVN was asking for a bachelor apartment was more than double what we were paying, which is not affordable. The average rent for a bachelor or one-bedroom apartment in Hamilton is currently $1,395 per month. My basic shelter only covers 36% of that cost. My total support payment only covers 89.9% of the price for shelter in 2021. Basic needs such as food, phone, and internet in 2021 is an average of $763 per month. Clothing is an average of $161 per month. Cleaning supplies cost an average of $45 per month. The total of those costs is $969 per month for a single person. Basic needs only covers 69% of that cost. For someone with type 2 diabetes like myself, the monthly average cost for special dietary foods and supplements is approximately $400 per month. My special diet allowance on ODSP only covers 21.5% of this cost. When you add up all the numbers, it becomes quite shocking. In 2021, the average cost for a single person living in Hamilton with only the basics is approximately $2,764 per month. ODSP maximum support in 2021 only covers 45% of that cost. What is the impact of this going to be for us here in this building come June 30th? The answer is very simple. We will be homeless. Another shocking piece of information that came to my attention is once we no longer have an address, our basic shelter gets removed from our total support. This means my total ODSP payment, once I am out and on the streets with no place to go, will only cover 27.5% of the current basic cost for a single person in this city. That makes it impossible for me to ever find a new home. Not to mention, everything that I own will have to be thrown away. It's not possible for me to carry anything with me. We need to raise the rates of ODSP to a minimum acceptance, which is approximately $2,800 a month. It's the only possible way we can survive because there just isn't enough low-income housing available in Hamilton. The homeless population is growing at an exponential rate. We need to start licensing landlords and protecting people like myself in low-income housing to avoid being put out on the streets. We don't send our pets or our livestock out without shelter and food. It's called inhumane treatment of animals, and it's a criminal offense. Why then is it okay to do it to fellow neighbors, fellow citizens, and fellow humans? We need to act now. We need to raise ODSP rates. Thank you for listening.
Good morning, City Councilors. My name is Juan Balandra. I'm a member of ACORN, East End Chapter, and I'm delegating today in support of the City Talking Action on Renoviction. We're seeing a small group of predatory landlords with exceptional power. They're evicting tenants as we speak in the middle of a global pandemic. This is morally wrong and should be unacceptable. At 295 Melvin, where I live, elite management has stopped doing repairs and maintenance for the last, 1 year. My building is falling apart and is getting to the point where if I fails into further disrepair, the landlord might claim that he needs to evict everybody in order to do some major renovations. This will displace at least 12 low-income families, such as myself, and this will result in a loss of affordable housing in Hamilton. In my neighborhood, just the next building, Family Properties is attempting to renovate almost an entire building at 285 Melvin. They gave out nearly identical M13 notices to 2 other buildings in Toronto. It is clear that they're just attempting to push back of low-income people such as myself. On Melvin Avenue, people are being pushed out of their homes and rents are doubling. Allowing renovations to happen will only increase the amount of homeless people in our city, and that will put even more stress on shelters during COVID-19. Now, imagine the impact of relocating tenants during the pandemic. In my case, I will have to go to new showings for new apartments. I will have to hire movers, or I even have to invite friends and family members to help me to move out of this place. Now, all of this will increase the amount of contacts a person such as myself has. The more people I get in contact with, the higher the chances I will get infected with COVID. Now, the city needs to restrict renovations to avoid increased homelessness. They need to increase the numbers of COVID-19 cases and to increase the loss of affordable housing. Rent safe is the answer. Thank you for listening to my delegation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, City Councilors. My name is Michael Lopez, and I'm a member of Hamilton ACORN's East End chapter. I'm delegating today in support of the city's taking action on renovictions. First, I want to start by thanking the council and staff for putting this report together and taking this issue seriously. The expansion of the Tenant Defense Fund and the amendments to include tenants being displaced due to evictions is a much welcome first step. Unfortunately, the report fails to recommend new policy tools that the city can implement to restrict renovictions. As mentioned in the report regarding the new Westminster, British Columbia licensing bylaw, quote, central to their licensing regime is the premise that tenants should be able to reside within their units during renovations and subsequent accommodations be made to address their needs within the unit or building during the proposed works. The landlord is, as a result, required to apply to the city in those circumstances where this is not feasible, end quote. We need to expand and protect affordable housing stock. This is the next logical step to take in order to tackle the renoviction crisis in our city. We have an opportunity to be leaders in addressing the housing crisis. The actions taken today will define how Hamilton will be in the future. Every person that becomes homeless due to renovictions is a reflection of our city's values. Let's not waste any time. Thank you for listening to my delegation.
Councilors, in the 1820s, my family moved here to Hamilton. My grandmother, a nurse at Hamilton General, my grandfather, an architect and tail gunner on our beloved Avro Lancaster, and my father, a 30-year employee of Stelco. Yet here I am, sitting on the brink of being pushed out of the community my family has called home, simply due to bureaucratic loopholes and a city council that sits idle as our most vulnerable populations are visibly suffering on our streets. The city council acknowledges the dish with one spoon treaty, but it feels like the lessons of history have been lost. The memories of those who have been pushed from their sacred lands are all but faded and feel replaced with a new cross-generational exiling. The city council has communicated to the community that affordable housing is simply not a priority. My name is Drew Hewitt, and like yourselves, I'm a public servant who's passionate about my contribution to the community and its future. I've lived at my Strathcona apartment for 10 years. 4 years ago, Robbie Mercacci took over management and ownership of this building. Since then, 4 tenants have been pushed from this building. We've experienced constant heating issues, water dropouts, unclean common areas, threats surrounding power usage, and all the while never receiving a rent receipt. Just imagine if you asked for a simple faucet repair and were met with the threat of renoviction. Candace, a 30-year tenant of this building, was evicted during her cancer treatment under the illusion the landlord would be moving into her unit. The only proof that was needed for the landlord-tenant board was a utility bill. There is no training or ethics program in place for landlords. Many unfit landlords hold hostage the livelihood of struggling families in this community. As a sanctuary city, we pride ourselves on being welcoming to newcomers. But how do we expect them to survive when landlords are throwing out upstanding tenants across the city? Affordable housing is disappearing, and we have to hold on to what's left. Housing is a major social determinant of health, and we need to retain the affordable housing that's here, as this is the city's most cost-beneficial health intervention. 62% of Canadians say they've been priced out of this inflated housing market, while landowners reap record equity gains. Long-term renters like myself are slapped with the fallout of renoviction notices. Your constituents desperately need your help. Affordable housing has never been more important than it is now during this global pandemic and economic fallout. How we treat each other during this global pandemic will be italicized in the history books. Now, as city councilors, I'm curious which side of history that you'd like to be on. We all eat from the dish. All of us that share this territory with one spoon.
Hello, Hamilton City Councilors. I'm one of many people's lives who will be demolished because of renoviction if I'm forced to move from my home. It's also taken advantage of low-income people. I'm a Hamiltonian born and raised. There's always been an extreme shortage of affordable housing in the city. Also, we are in the midst of a global pandemic. I'm asking the people in charge to put an end to renovictions, please. Family Properties has given an offering of $4,000, to which is insignificant funds, to move and offset any increased rental costs. I've also invested in a security system because I'm concerned my superintendent landlord has or could enter my apartment without my knowledge or consent. He has entered 11 times in the past 2 years. The noise from construction they are doing now has decreased my ability to enjoy my apartment. Thank you for letting me speak on this matter. I'm a tenant at 285 Melbourne.
City Councilors, my name is James Webb. I live at 92 Pearl Street South, near Locke in Maine. I lived at this address that I'm living currently at now for almost 8 years. We just been informed in February by our new landlord and his investor, they wanted to N13 us, saying there's lots of work to be done on this place. He's got to rip out walls and ceilings and check the plumbing, check the electrical. I and the other 4 tenants in this building haven't had really too many issues with electrical, plumbing. So I don't know what he's referring to. He's also referring to foundations. We have no idea what he's referring to. He says he's going to get the permits, which I've already looked, and he has not gotten the permits yet. We've contacted lawyers and all that. They don't know why he's doing this, because in the N13 notice that I have here, he basically doesn't mention too many things that warrant for us to be evicted. Like I said, there's 4 units in this house. We've actually lived here for 8 years. As you can see, it's pretty nice. It's clean. We basically we're not dirty people. I live with my 15-year-old son. We basically have nowhere to go. We are paying $908 in rent. I know that's lower than the Hamilton average right now. It's understandable because everything's just blown up right now. I'm a full-time. I've been working my job for 16 years now. I don't have enough funds to pay $1,600, and up for a 2-bedroom apartment. My son goes to Westdale Secondary School. How am I supposed to afford a place? Food's rising, everything's costing a lot of money. I have no debts, but I can tell you right now, if I have to move into a $1,600 a month apartment or $1,500 at the low end, I've seen them actually $1,450. I'm going to be in debt. I can tell you that right now. So I'm hoping that the city is going to be acting upon what people are doing. These investors, these I call them con artists, coming in. First off, the gentleman that bought this place, he didn't even see any of the apartments. He bought this apartment complex sight unseen. All the other tenants, he didn't come into the place. He bought this sight unseen. He probably looked at the figures. Every tenant in this building is paying a low income price. Like we're talking between $800 and $1,100 for. There's one 3-bedroom, there's a 2 bedrooms, and another 2 bedrooms, but they're all paying below what the market rate is going for right now. How are people going to be afford what we're paying right now. It's just ridiculous. We can't afford to stay in Hamilton. And actually, in fact, we've looked even further than Hamilton. That would be, we have family and friends around here. They can't help us. They're in the same situation. There's other health issues too as well that my family has.
Good afternoon, councilors, fellow delegates. My name is Rebecca Guzzo, and I am the Secretary of Hamilton ACORN's Mountain Chapter. I'm coming today to speak with you about renoviction and landlord licensing. My fellow ACORN members will no doubt tell you how successful Westminster, BC has been with their landlord licensing program. So I'd like to discuss something about investments. I'm an investor. I have stocks. None of them have 50% returns. I'm sure you invest. Everybody should. But what stock makes 50% returns? Real estate investment trusts, right? How do they get so much money and how are they so successful? Gotta wonder. Well, it's actually not a wonder at all. They renovict people. We'll go in and buy up your apartment building, tell everybody they need to leave. And if they don't, we'll give them money. And if they don't, we'll threaten them, we'll harass them, and then we'll give them paperwork that may or may not be legitimate. We may or may not take them to court. Either way, for no other reason than the new owner of the building wants to kick all the tenants out to charge more rent, we'll see a surge of tenants being displaced from their homes. Now, if that wasn't unfair to begin with, we'll move on to the next step. We're going to do very minor, low-cost repairs. Make it a little bit of paint, maybe a new appliance, and we'll put new tenants in. The apartments that were $900, let's charge $1,300. The apartments that were $700, $1,100. Great investment, great return. Wow, in a couple of months, you have made your money and then some. So what time is it now? Time to sell the building before I have to invest any money in repairs or renovations for real, which would cost money. I'm gonna sell the building to the next real estate investment trust. Apartments that were $1,800. Apartments that were $1,300. Let's sit on that a couple of months and cash in the bank. What a clever trick. And they're making a lot of money. Shifting gears, we've talked in meetings with several city staff. And we've come across a huge problem with licensing. What do we do about illegally zoned apartments? That's a tricky one. Well, this is what I come to you with today. Please, please, please focus on the sharks. Leave the fish in the pond. These real estate investment trusts are the major source of homelessness right now. They are kicking people out left, right, and center. They are cancerously gobbling up our affordable housing stock, and they are clearly a corporate business and clearly need to be licensed. I'm not saying to license Aunt Sue, who's renting her basement, maybe legitimate, maybe not apartment out to this nice boy who goes to college. That's not where we're having the renoviction problems. I'm saying we need to license major apartment rentals. Multi-unit complexes need to be licensed, and it needs to happen now because they're going to keep raising the prices. And no matter how much you invest in basic income, no matter how much you invest in raising minimum wage, no matter how much you invest in raising ODSP and OW rates, That money is just going to go into the pockets of investors, not into the pockets of Canadians. They are vampires and they are sucking our city dry of our affordable housing and taking the wages of the working poor. And it needs to stop. Thank you for your time and attention today. Please take action.